Hey YouTube, how you doing? It's Max. Today I just got home from work and I was thinking about I guess workplace inefficiencies. Um so I don't know if this is a good intro, but I'm just starting right into it. So I live in the USA, right? And I feel like in the USA we tend to have this. Maybe it's just Western society in general. I don't know if it's like this in other countries, but I feel like there's definitely this like hustle culture these days. And I guess what I mean by hustle culture is basically this lifestyle where you're expected to sort of grind in your school or career. And I don't know how long this has been a thing, but I think in like high school even there was like this evidence of a hustle culture, at least in the area I live in. So my high school had a graduation rate of 98%, which I think is pretty high. I don't know what the normal average is. I probably could have looked that up, but I didn't. This isn't really that big of like a thing. To my point, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, my high school, my background. So, hustle culture in high school. My high school had a graduation rate of like 98%. I had a 3.6 grade point average, which I feel like is something that's decent, but compared to like most of my classmates, it was sort of like on the low side, which is weird because that's like a B. So like I was ranked like 250 or something out of 500 students with a 3.6 grade point average, and I think our valedictorian had like a 4.8 or something crazy like that. Anyways, there was this mentality I remember through high school, where you would just kind of like go to school, you'd get assigned homework, you'd do your homework, and any extra time you had, you devoted to studying for tests and stuff like that. So, like, in like the 1980s, I guess there were all these like high school stereotypes of like the jocks and the preps and the like, nerds and all that stuff. At my high school, it was more like, at least my experience in high school, everyone was smart, so there weren't really nerds. It was like even anyone who was a jock had like a pretty high GPA. Anyone who was a cheerleader usually had a high GPA. Most of the people I went to school with had a high GPA, so like everyone was like very motivated to do well. Um, and I think like this mindset of it's a good mindset, but I think it's a little bit too strong. If I recall, like there was a little bit too much emphasis on doing well in school by everybody, and I think we were just a very competitive area. I think all the schools in my area were pretty competitive, and I don't know if this is really like I don't want to say it's a bad mindset because it's not a bad mindset. I just don't know if I completely agree with the mindset of hustling and just only doing school or activities that are related to like boosting your ethos. And what I mean by that was like, so I played ice hockey a lot growing up, and I played for the school's varsity team. And in order to be on the school's varsity team, there was like this soft rule of also having to play travel hockey at a decently high level. And so when I wasn't doing school or homework or studying, I was usually playing ice hockey. And we had several practices per week, and we had trainings, and then we had like the school game match on Friday nights, and then we had to go play on our travel team as well during the weekends. So it's either this school grind or this sports grind. And when I stopped playing ice hockey, I took up like more extracurriculars. They were saying it's good to diversify your resume up. And I'm in high school and I hadn't even worked a job, but I got a part-time job in food service. Volunteered at a few different school clubs just to kind of boost that resume. Key Club was a huge thing when I was growing up in high school, so like they would like document volunteer hours, and it was kind of like a somewhat of a like low key competition of how many volunteer hours you get. I remember I even took up like acting for a little bit in high school for a couple of years, and that was I'm not really huge into acting, but it's just it was really important to like just have a good resume because I guess here's how I see school, I guess. So like in elementary school, the whole thing is to prepare you for middle school. And in middle school, it's all to prepare you for high school. And in high school, it's all to prepare you for college. And I know not everyone goes to college, but like when I was growing up in high school, it was like that was the only real like option. Like nobody talked about not going to college where I kind of grew up. So it was kind of like you know like it's just a very affluent area, and so people were like, yeah, so the normal progression in life is to you know go to college and you know compete against everyone else in the country for these schools in this weed out process, and then you pay tens of thousands of dollars that you know is a lot of money, and you do it to get this piece of paper, and you're expected to you know get a job after that, and that was just kind of like the norm, I guess. So you work real hard in school, you work real hard in college, and I guess like I think college is often criticized for not really teaching you as much as you probably should for the tens of thousands of dollars that you get. It's more about that piece of paper. But anyway, I'm kind of ranting on about this school thing too much. Overall, the biggest lesson I kind of got from school was this kind of, I mean, it's probably not the biggest lesson, but like one of the key lessons that I kind of was ingrained to follow, I guess, was that if I had free time, I should do something productive with it. And even after graduating, I remember when I first graduated in September, it was like really weird not having homework, and it felt like you know I need to like fill that void with something productive. And then you go online and everyone's talking about hustle culture, so I guess that's where I'm coming from with this whole hustle culture thing. Like it started when I was in school, and then even after school, I feel like I still need to like grind at things that I may not want to do, and I don't even know why I'm grinding at them sometimes. It's just like this societal pressure to grind. And that's just, I guess, my perspective of our society in the US, or at least where I've been, you know, living. But you know, I think that like on the surface, um, we kind of know that like you know grades don't matter, like they do matter, like but like C's get degrees is like a common saying, and you know with like work we're like aware that like money isn't everything, but like financial literacy is important. So like if you are good at managing your money, it doesn't really matter how much you make as long as you can survive off what you make, kind of thing. But like especially like prevalent right now it's early July 2022. Inflation has gone up by 8% in the last year, and so I guess while you can argue that like money isn't everything, with inflation going up, it does matter a bit. And so when you're kind of like you know working, there is this pressure of like what can I be doing to you know make more money to you know fulfill lifestyle goals, stuff like that. So I feel like I've just kind of gone off on this tangent. Nothing so far has really been about workplace inefficiencies, but I felt like it was sort of good to kind of like set this tone. So what I was what made me think about doing this video, I was watching a couple videos recently. One is about how the U.S. working harder is actually making the U.S. poorer. I'll put a link in the description because I probably won't explain it nearly as well as the people who make these videos. But essentially, the argument is that we're becoming this industrialized and efficient society in terms of technology, but we have this consumer culture. And you know we have things like you know next day shipping. We want immediate solutions when a problem comes, because we're very what's whatever that term is for when you want instant gratification, I guess. We have like these on-call kind of places where you can call 24/7, open 24 hours a day, including weekends, kind of thing. And it was interesting because it compared our consumer culture to Germany's culture, which focuses strictly on output as opposed to the amount of time spent working. And I think they pointed out some statistic where Germany, on average, puts in about 1,300 working hours a year compared to the US's 1,700 working hours a year, which is a 400-hour difference. Yet Germany has they make more money per hour spent. So from that perspective, you could say that this 13 hours a work year is more efficient based on the German culture of how they do things, etc. And I think one of the big things about this is that we are kind of in this place, in this position as a society where we're very comfortable with a lot of luxuries, such as I said before, with the like America or the Amazon packages delivering within 24 hours, or being able to go out to eat on Sunday nights because in the past, like businesses were closed on Sundays. But like as we're becoming a more competitive market, I guess. So like if you're a restaurant that closes on Sundays, chances are you aren't going to be as I guess competitive as a business compared to your other counterparts who are going to be like, yeah, we're going to be open on Sundays. And so it's putting the customers first, I guess, instead of like the employees first. And I think in Germany, the argument in the video was that the customers are equal to the employees, and in the U.S., the customers are valued more than the employees. And so I think that it's the ironic thing here is that we're all kind of customers at the end of the day, whether we're employees or not. And so if we're putting all of our value into making the customer happy, but we're working longer hours, we're less of a customer, I guess, and more of an employee. I don't know if that really is making sense, but I guess like if we value the customer more than the employee, but in order to do that, we have to be more of an employee than a customer. Um, I don't know. It makes sense in my head, but I don't want to go off on that for too long. Anyways, like I'm fortunate, I guess, because like I have a job that has good work home life balance. My bosses are very great. They also value uh, home work life balance. So this isn't really meant to be a complaint, more of an observation, I guess, um, in a sense. And I think that um, even but like with my current job, there's still like a fixed hours system that I want to talk about. Like I don't work 9 to 5, I work 6:30 to like 2:30, but it's still like an equivalent of like a 9 to 5 kind of lifestyle where you're expected to, clock in at the designated time and then work your entire shift up until your shift ends. Like that's kind of like the expectation in the contract when you sign on to working. And this is usually with a 9 to 5, like a good 8 or 9 hours dedicated to the work. And this doesn't account for however long it takes you to travel to work. For example, at my work, I think we've made a couple videos about me filming on my way to work, and it only takes like 15 minutes tops. But some people I work with travel like an hour to get to work. And so if you account for like an 8 to 9 hour workday, an hour to work, an hour back, let's say it takes you about two extra hours to do any other adult responsibilities throughout the day, such as going grocery shopping or making dinner, doing dishes, cleaning the house, and then you have a good 8 hours of sleep. You only really have about 4 hours to really be a consumer in this consumer based culture. I guess if you're going grocery shopping, that's like an extra, hour you get to, be a consumer. But really, it's like about 5 hours of really being a consumer as opposed to the 8 or 9 hours you are being an employee. So if we're valuing the consumer over the employee, we're spending twice as much time being an employee than we are being a consumer. And then this doesn't really account for, um, working on call. I feel like more and more jobs these days kind of expect you to like be on call. So if you're like a supervisor, I remember when I was a supervisor working in a restaurant, they would always text me or call me on my days off. And that kind of eats into your time of being a consumer. You're more of being an employee again. So I just think that's like an interesting observation. It's not like a profound observation. It's just something that I kind of just wanted to talk about today. And with this, like we've gotten this technology to help us be more efficient and automated at our jobs, which you would think that this kind of would help make us, um, I guess, if we're being more efficient, we might not have to work as long. But it almost feels like this technology has kind of made it so that we can work longer, and it's almost expected that we work longer. And what I mean, kind of like going back with the whole like, being a supervisor and being called from home all the time. It's like, you have a cell phone now, you've got email now, internet access, we have Teams, and we can pretty much, answer a message from anywhere. We don't have to be in the office. We have this kind of, Teams is an example where I don't know who else has kind of like worked remotely, but you have this kind of icon that says like away, and it almost feels like this kind of like calling you out that like if you let your computer kind of like sit for like a couple minutes, it will go to this away status, and anyone who kind of looks at your icon can see that you're away, and it kind of makes it feel like you should be working. Even if you are working, sometimes it just like comes up. And especially if you're having like a slow day, whether you're in the office or at home, and the expectation is that you should be working all those hours that you're assigned, all 8 or 9 hours. And if it's like, I guess, just with this increased technology and dependence in technology and methods to make our jobs more efficient, it seems like the natural consequence should be that we invest less time for performing these jobs and duties when it seems like we're kind of expected to work more. Sorry if I kind of lost my train of thought there. But I guess like people always joke about like, robots will take our jobs one day, but it's almost like haven't they already? Like there's so many processes. Even I've only been working, like I've been out of school for 5 years. And even in the current job I've been in, I've seen a lot of like new technologies and innovations in the processes that we've been doing that have made my job more efficient. I used to have to do a lot of more manual data entry, but with the you know better methods and better technology, it seems like this helps automate my job a little bit easier. But we're still doing the same hours, so it kind of feels like there's all this extra free time on some days where it's like I don't know what to do to fill it because there's all these new practices. um and I'll link this other video. It's to kind of highlight this point a little bit more. So the first video kind of covers this whole uh, whatever I was talking about like busyness and with the Germany and stuff. And this second video will talk more about like bullshit jobs. And pretty much like as we've become a more efficient society, we've seen an increase in like service jobs, which the video argues have little to no purpose and are really just boxes that we need to check in a bureaucratic system. Which I think that the bureaucracy has its benefits, but there are definitely some good points to highlight of like how it's kind of creating these jobs that have seemingly no purpose. And while I don't think it's completely that the jobs don't have purpose, I think it's that we aren't really, um, they aren't really designed as efficiently as they could be. So, for example, in my job, um, there's this mini game I like to call where I'm playing this game of telephone, where essentially, if you don't know, I kind of do planning and maintenance or planning and scheduling for maintenance department. And so, if a technician out in the field needs a part so they can do a service or repair, they'll call me because I order all the parts. And so when I get this call from the technician, I, take the notes of what they need, get the serial numbers and all that stuff, and then I go call a distributor that will sell that part. And then that person I talk to is often like a customer service person who will then transfer me to another person who may know more about the parts. And then after I tell them about the parts that we need, they'll write that information down, and then they'll make a phone call to the actual manufacturing company, and then they'll place the order for me. So I guess why I wanted to highlight this is because it kind of follows that bullshit jobs bureaucracy kind of thing, where like technically the technician could just call the manufacturing company and place the order for the parts. The manufacturer doesn't go through all these middlemen and just gives the part directly to the technician. But we have all these different procedures in place because, bureaucracy. And so like it's just kind of like one of these things where we've got like half a dozen people doing a job, like a simple order, rather than like it being this, you know, streamlined thing. It can get a little bit like it's one of those things where like if the technician's like, hey, can you tell me what the part lead time is, which is pretty much when is the part going to get here. I can look up the tracking number, or if I don't have the tracking number, then I have to go contact the distributor guy, who's like, okay, I'll be right back. I'll go talk to the manufacturer. So if you kind of get that, it's like a big game of telephone, is why I kind of wanted to bring that up. And again, I'm not really trying to complain that I have it hard, because it's not like a terrible thing. I guess it's just something that like um, I think that the system is kind of slow moving in ways where if I have work to do, it's usually this kind of like tracking these projects, like many different projects at once, as opposed to something where I work on a project for a continuous 8 hours straight. So it kind of defeats the purpose sometime of being there for 8 hours straight when you can get all your work done in like a good hour. um and once you're done with your hour, it's like, what do you do? So then you have a couple of options. You could try to be proactive and create a project for yourself. But most of the time, even if you put in a lot of time or energy into a project, this bureaucratic system has checks and balances, and you can propose the idea, but it's not really going to be like approved unless it gets through all this system and people are usually doing their things. So no one really wants to get extra work thrust upon them. So by doing extra work yourself to get it approved, you're giving more people work, and people are kind of like it's kind of like um, not really a good thing in a lot of the places I've worked at, that I've kind of learned. So it's essentially like doing extra credit if you're in school. Like you're going out of your way to do this extra credit, but it's really kind of purposeless extra credit where you just don't get graded on it. It might be a good learning experience, but it's essentially just busy work at the end of the day where you're doing something for no reason. And I think this is kind of why the root of this whole bullshit jobs kind of argument. I don't think it was mentioned like this in the video, but I think like just um, these jobs kind of have these impressions of being bullshit because they don't require the full 8 hours to do them. They're kind of one of these things where, like, say you're a receptionist and you don't really have a whole lot to do until someone calls you, and then you transfer them. You might get some projects on the side, but a lot of the day is kind of spent kind of trying to figure out what to do with your time. And I think this also contributes to this whole like and I'm not trying to say that like receptionists are like a BS job. I'm just trying to say that like there's like tons of these types of jobs where it's kind of like you're kind of on call the entire time you're at your job. um so I don't know, like what I'm trying to say here is that our culture seems to care more about like this image rather than efficiency. So like when you're at the job, your goal is more to look busy rather than to do your job efficiently. And because of all these bureaucratic systems in place, such as be it on the job from this to this time, it's hard to be as efficient as you could be. Um, and you know, Arguably my job, it just doesn't take like 40 hours to complete. And on a slow week, I could probably do all of my work within an hour, um, or maybe a couple hours. But like if it's like a really slow week, you can kind of just like, I don't know, our culture just like sees this like even saying like I could probably do all my job, my like entire job in like a couple hours. It seems like it's this negative thing, like should they be giving me more to do? But like even if you do give me more to do and I get it done, it's like our culture doesn't reward um, having good time management skills. It doesn't reward being efficient and getting your tasks done. Instead, it's more about like, um, just acting busy is like kind of like the message that I'm getting from our society. Just like, you know, do work. You don't have to know why you're doing work as long as you're doing work. And that's kind of like, I don't know, the vibe. Um, like realistically, like at this, like thinking about it, I could probably try to, like most people, I think that like have these bullshit jobs could probably work multiple bullshit jobs, especially if they're like remote jobs where you can just kind of like um, do something from anywhere. You could probably get paid multiple full-time salaries to do um, what's expected. And but I think that that's very frowned upon as well. Like I think even some companies they have like employee contracts prohibiting you from working multiple jobs, or at least especially ones that are like conflict of interest or whatever. But like I think it's mostly just frowned upon to even like do something like that. Like no one really does that, and I feel like if you were to do that, people would like kind of like look at you weird. And like I feel like you'd probably have a conversation with your boss about that, and your boss would be like, "Should I be assigning you more work?" kind of thing. So I think that overall, like it's just all kind of like is part of this umbrella of hustle culture of just like working, maybe without reason, maybe with reason, but like it's more important just to work than it is to have like the end goal in mind. And I guess so. Like, yeah, my point is pretty much just like the U.S. doesn't really value like workplace efficiency that well. Um, if I can produce the same output working 1 hour as I can in 8 hours, then like I feel like that's kind of like a red flag, not to like any company in particular, but just as like our culture. And I don't really because it's so ingrained in our like culture and society, I don't really it's like systemic racism in a way. Like what's the best way to kind of resolve the problem? And I guess there's like a lot of like ways you can do that, but it's just so ingrained it's hard to really just completely remove it from society. It's just kind of like something you kind of have to like just be mindful of, and it's a work in progress. And stuff like that. But even when I was in like food service and working hourly, at the end of a shift, when we had to like clean up, it was more incentivizing to work slower, because if you're paid by the hour, it's not really about the amount of dishes you do or the amount of tables you serve. It's more about just like the longer you're there before you clock out, the more money you get paid. And while I said like the amount of tables you served with the whole tips, I think that like that's a whole nother topic of conversation. But if you're working, especially at a place where they split all their tips, that's another reason. Like I'm kind of like not really incentivized to do like I can make more money if I get tipped, but like if like my other people aren't really getting tipped or the customers aren't really tipping, then it's like what's the point? It's not based on like something that's stable. It's more based on I guess like how generous the customer is feeling because it's a customer centric model. Um, but in conclusion, we're kind of getting pretty long here. I think that for many jobs that are arguably bullshit, working time fixed shift time fixed shifts is in a way kind of bullshit because it promises sorry I can't speak today. It promises this idea of trying to justify the non-bullshit nature of the job with bullshit activities that are ultimately the cause of perceiving the job as bullshit. I don't know if that makes any sense. Basically, like um, if it's a bullshit job, I think that the root of the problem is that it's a time fixed shift because if you do your work fast, then you have no real incentive to do your work fast. So if you do your work fast, you're just kind of like sitting there doing nothing, and you're kind of just doing BS until then. But if you kind of like save work that you like, if you kind of procrastinate on some work, if someone wants to come check on you, you can be like, oh, I got this project to do, I'm busy, even though you're just kind of procrastinating. I don't know if that makes sense. Pretty much, it's like The Office, the television show The Office. Like, while The Office is very exaggerated, I feel like it's just so relatable because it kind of just highlights how their like jobs are kind of just bullshit. And so they do all this stuff that's like kind of irrelevant to work throughout the day, and they still have jobs, and people. It's just like this kind of it really highlights the office life. um, so I think that like this fixed time requirement thing is really the core thing. There's probably some things that I'm, missing. I just kind of like speaking off the top of my head and doing like light amount of research, so I'm no expert in this at all. But I feel like the fixed time thing is probably a good place to like start revamping for societal change, um, and just kind of, I guess, rewarding more efficiency and more output, as opposed to um, just kind of sitting there and wasting time essentially. And if someone is able to complete their job, up to standards in an hour, I think there should be able to, I guess, leave work early, if that would be an incentive to get things done. And I think that like it kind of, you could say that, well, what if they leave work and they're just on call, they aren't really, they aren't going to check their email. And I think that like you can always keep your phone on you until you pretty much, like, instead of just being like the I guess what I'm saying is, instead of being like at the office and just kind of sitting there in front of a computer, you can kind of do what you want, um as if like and then when you do get an email, you can always just check it. And pretty much the way to, I guess, uh validate like if that person is like doing their job or not, is to like see the results and be like, oh, are they like missing all their phone calls? Are they, um not responding to emails? Are they not, doing all these things? And that could be like a thing where it's on the employee to like still do those things, whether they're at the office or working from home or remotely. I feel like I'm not making any sense in this video, but it made sense in my head. um but I guess, like, to close up, like, working with purpose is beneficial, um, to both the company and the employee. Like, it's not like, you're gonna like stop working if you just like, um, change the whole time thing. Working with purpose is, or working without purpose isn't beneficial to anybody. I think that like this hustle culture promotes working without purpose for the sake of promoting this image. What I've been kind of saying. I think that, changing the societal mentality will ultimately cause us to be more productive while working, um, because mainly because, if we're I'm just having brain farts left and right here today. But like, I think that changing the societal mentality will ultimately cause us to be more productive, because, I think that and it's kind of a complicated thing, but like, because I think that this kind of ties into mental health in a way. Um, and I'm not trying to just use buzz terms here. I kind of think that like, if you're working, like, for example, this bullshit job, you have lower self-esteem. Uh, we want to do jobs that, we want to be like contributing members of our job of society, and so just sitting there not doing anything, it plays a role in our mental health. And, we we're less efficient in our lives because, as I was talking with the whole hours thing of how we're at work for 8 or 9 hours, if we're not spending so much time at work, we can be more flexible and healthier in our normal lives. I'm not saying that everyone's going to be, use that time wisely, but I just think that there's so much more room to increase, mental health, increase, productivity in our daily lives, with these like kind of flex schedules if your job can allow for it. I don't know if any of this is making any sense. This is probably like one of the weirdest videos of just me going everywhere. Sorry, it's, all over the place. Hopefully, you kind of got what I was trying to get across. Maybe just watch the videos in the description, and that will help. Feel free to critique it. I'm probably, so wrong on so many of these issues, but we're on like video like 75 or something, so we're like three-fourths way to 100 videos. So, we're just chugging along, and we're just, I've already recorded 35 minutes of this, so let's upload it. Raw footage.